Canada says it will enact retaliatory tariffs against the US from September the 8th. But how seriously should the US take this? David Henig is Director of UK Trade Policy Project at the European Centre for International Political Economy. Lovely to see you again, David. So I want to start with this September the 8th deadline. Is it a real deadline or is it a pressure tactic, do you think, that quietly gets pushed back?
I think it is both. I think that Canada is deadly serious about taking retaliatory measures against the US. Political pride, Canada's reputation is regarded as being at stake here. They have every intention of following through. But at the same time, they've provided this window, which is an opportunity for maybe for calmer heads to prevail. At this point, that doesn't look likely. But what we know with President Trump is that he's quite capable of reversing course and claiming victory. So he could do this, and he has been given now this 2-week period to do so.
I mean, Canada's economy does lean on the US far more than the other way around. Doesn't that mean that Ottawa has a weaker hand here? You know, whatever Carney says about retaliation.
The nature of the integration between the US and Canada means that both sides are vulnerable here. I've been seeing studies today that suggest that yes, Canada would take an economic hit from a larger scale trade war of the sort that now President Trump is now saying that he can go higher in tariffs. But I've seen figures that suggest that after 1 year it would reduce growth to zero, but then the Canadian economy would recover after that. So Canadian exports do predominantly go to the US, but the economy is not completely dependent on the US. And at the same time, the US has dependencies on Canada, for example, for energy imports. So if this was to get nastier, then you could actually see both sides suffering economically.
We've talked a little bit with our correspondent about the market's reaction being a little bit flat so far, except for autos. And I'm wondering if you think that the shock has already been priced in, you know, because American companies have had years to prepare for this. You know, are they actually ready, or is this about to hit supply chains like a sledgehammer?
No, I think it's the nature of these particular tariffs where extra on which are being increased. It's only covering 20 billion of imports into the US, and it would only be the same amount of US imports into Canada. And at this stage, that wouldn't affect the crucial supply chain dependencies, for example, in the automotive sector, or at least not primarily. This is more about final products, summer engineering, but also things like hockey sticks. So it's as yet maybe not so serious. Now, if this gets to the point where those supply chains are affected, where pharmaceuticals, car trade is affected, then I would expect a much bigger impact from the US stock market.
Well, you know, Carney says he's talking to other people. You know, if this standoff continues, drags on, who else moves in to fill the gap? Is this Canada's moment to strike new trade deals elsewhere? And if so, with whom?
Canada has already been talking with the EU, though that they already have a pretty good trade deal with the EU. It's been having conversations with China as well. It's been trying to work on enhancing other trade arrangements. So Canada is already in that diversification place, and it will continue, I think, to work in that way. They can't, though, ultimately replace the US, and there is going to be some calculation that at some point, under Trump probably, but even if it's a successor, the US will at some point take a more traditional, a more reasonable approach, and will not be imposing these tariffs. So that is Canada's long-term bet here. This is not something that is likely to stay over time. This is a short-term problem. It may become a medium-term problem, but no other US administration is likely to behave in quite the same way towards them.
David Henig, thank you very much indeed.